Royce Hart has been described as Richmond's Tasmanian tiger, much discussed but rarely seen. Given his inability to travel, we took Open Mike on the road to Hobart. In 1996, a panel of experts named Royce Hart centre-half forward in the team of the 20th century, the best player in 100 years in the toughest position on the football field. Royce Hart, why aren't you a legend of this game?
Wasn't my decision, Mike.
Are you surprised that you're not?
No, not really. I didn't think about it that much. I felt honoured to be named centre-half forward in what you termed as the hardest position in the ground to play.
11 seasons with Richmond, but you packed a heap in, didn't you? I mean, it's a surprisingly short period in the modern era, but there were 4 premierships, 5 grand finals, lots of accolades. It was a stellar career, wasn't it?
It was the best part of Richmond's existence in the VFL-AFL and continues to be.
But let's go back to the start. You're a 17-year-old young man in Hobart, Tasmania. Richmond shows interest in you and decides to go after you. You decide to go to Melbourne at the end of 1965. Pick up the story from there, Royce.
Well, before that, Graham Richmond had come down here to see me play, and he arrived on the Saturday, and we normally played our under-19 football down here on a Saturday morning, but had been transferred to the Sunday, and he sat down with my mother, and I was working in the Commonwealth Bank at the time, and Mum said to Graham, he hasn't got enough clothes to go to Melbourne, and Graham said, I'll give you 6 shirts and a suit.
6 shirts and a suit. Now, that's part of football folklore. Was there 20 quid attached to that?
I didn't see it.
You didn't see it? But there was no bartering. I mean, you were happy to do that. There was the opportunity to play AFL football that just said, well, I don't care what we get, I'm going?
Well, it was the next step on. I hadn't played senior football down here, but I'd won the best and fairest in the association, and I felt that I could play at a better level, and the best level was VFL football at that time.
Did you take from Hobart, it was called the mainland then, and there was a bit of a sort of an inferiority complex in Tassie about young people here going and making their way in the mainland. Did you think that you'd succeed, or were you just going to sort of say, look, I'll take my chances and see where it takes me?
Well, I didn't even know where Richmond was. When I saw Rich in front of it, I said, that might make me rich. And I didn't have a clue where Richmond was, but I wanted to play at the top level, so I went.
First year, 1966, you started in the under-19s under Slug Jordan. You finished the season on grand final day playing in the reserves. Pretty tight game, wasn't it?
That's right. There was about 20 seconds to go, and I took a mark, I say now, about 60 metres from goal. It could have been 20. And Barry Teague, who was a young rover in the Richmond seconds, came up to me and he said, for God's sake, kick a point and we'll draw. I went back and I went through the goals and we won.
So how far was it, do you reckon?
Oh, it's getting longer.
Big torp. You loved torps when you came to Melbourne, didn't you?
Yes, that's all I could kick.
Yeah. The following year, you're playing in the first, 1967. It's your first year at the VFL-AFL level. Your first game's against Essendon. You kick 3-7.
That's right.
What transpired after that? All with torps too, weren't they?
All with torps.
Yeah.
And after the game, I sat down with Graham Richmond and Tommy Hafey, who Tommy was the coach at the time, and they said, you'll have to improve your kicking. So I decided that I'll kick a drop punt, and I didn't know much about drop punts, and no one did in those days. There was no kicking coach, so I decided to base the drop punt on the same theory as what a drop kick, only kick the ball before it hit the ground, and I started kicking drop punts from then.
And I know what your training regime was like, but were you working on that during the 67 season or between seasons?
No, I worked on it during the 67 season. Like, as I say, there were no kicking coaches and you had to devise your own method as to what to do. And that's the method I used. So
3-7 in your first game, disappointment, they're frustrated with your kicking. We go to fast track it to the end of the season. You play in the grand final. Richmond wins its first premiership in 20 years. You kick 3 goals. You're the recruit of the year and you kick 55 goals for the season. I mean, you wouldn't dream of having a first year like that, would you?
No, it surprised me a bit, but it didn't just happen like that. When I first went to Melbourne, I went into Frank Sedgman's gym when the Pope Stan Nichols was a head instructor there, and I worked on the weights for, say, all the off-season to go from 10 stone 12 to 13 stone 4. And that's what I had to do, but I did a lot of work, and one of the first groups of players, and I remember Kevin Bartlett being in that group, working on weights, and now all players these days do it.
Now, I want to take you to 69, Royce. I mean, it's the most extraordinary season that I can remember. You're in national service.
That's right.
You're based between Sydney and Adelaide, is that right?
I went to Puckapunyal for 10 weeks.
Yep.
and then went to the School of Artillery in Sydney, and then went to Adelaide, Woodside.
Okay. So you hook up with Glenelg, the South Australian Tigers. You do your training there. You fly back to Melbourne on the weekends to play.
I trained one night a week at Glenelg under Neil Curley.
Right.
And then
no
fly
nights
back,
in Melbourne.
I'd fly back on Friday night and come back to South Australia on Sunday night.
At the end of the 69 season, you win your second premiership and you win the best and fairest in a premiership team, not having trained with your team.
Well, the theories and what was going on there were thrown out the window because there was no special diets, there was no training with your teammates, and it just worked for me.
You might have been right, mate. You might have been a unique player. Which takes us to the book, Royce, the famous book.
The book.
You were commissioned to write a book at the age of 22. You've had four years in the system. There's lots of fact or fiction about you picking yourself in your best ever team. My understanding is you were asked to name a team that you would like to play with.
Like to play with, yes, and that was right. In actual fact, I remember a headline that Alf Brown, the chief writer for the Herald, had in the book review saying Royce Hart's head's that big, he's not taking marks anymore, he can't get his arms over his head.
You seem to be sort of so matter-of-fact about this. I mean, has this not worried you over the years that people think that Royce Hart's a big head, how could a bloke pick himself in his best ever team? I mean, I know it's a misconception, but that was what most people thought happened, wasn't it?
No, it didn't worry me at all. Because what you said was right, the players who I'd like to play with. Some people took offence, it didn't worry me.
Let's go back to 67. You've played 4 games with the Tigers. You're 19 years of age. You get selected in the second Victorian team to play, I think, come back here to Tassie.
Okay.
Yep. Ron Brassey pulls you out of the number 1 team and you're elevated to play for Victoria after 4 club games against Western Australia at the MCG.
That's right. Played on Colin Beard, who was later to become the fullback for Richmond in the 1969 premiership side. Ended up kicking 7 goals, and I think at the other end, Big Bob Johnson, I think, kicked 6 or 7.
Were you surprised how well you went first up in Melbourne?
I was always confident I'd do okay. But,
Why?
Well, I had the athletic ability to be able to handle it, and I just thought that it was the next step up, and I'd put in the preparation at the end of between 65 and 67. I did a lot of gym work, and it paid off.
You're famous for the Royce Hart style of marking, which was not jumping over the top of packs, but floating across the front with that big stretch. I mean, does that go back to your high jumping days at school?
Yeah, it goes back to high jump when I was in Tasmania as a kid, and my theory was that if the bigger player went to where the ball was going to go, and I took a run up of about 3 or 4 metres and jumped in front of him, I'd be able to take the mark, and it proved right.
Tell me about the Peter Walker mark, Royce. I don't know if you think it's the best one that you've ever taken, but it's the most talked about, the most famous, isn't it?
Well, it's the most critical time of the game. It was about the 20-minute mark of the last quarter of a grand final.
In the 67 grand final.
67 grand final.
Roy West kicks the ball in for Geelong.
That's right, and about 2 minutes earlier, the ball had gone over, and Geelong took it down there into the ground. And it was just through sheer frustration to try and get the ball, so I ran and Peter Walker was there, and I jumped on his shoulder from my recollection.
Yeah, Martin Flanagan's done an account of that mark and created the impression that you put your foot up and sort of launched yourself from there, but you seem to me to just soar, just take off.
I think I jumped on his shoulder.
Yeah.
That's my recollection, but it's a dim one because it was the last quarter of a grand final.
Did you kick the goal?
No, I kicked it up to Paddy Ganane, who I think dropped the mark.
Well, he dropped a few of them, Paddy, didn't he? You were a superb kick for goal. Obviously, there was no fear in you when you went back. Regardless of what the scoreboard pressure was, you had this belief that you could kick it.
I did, and it came from the fact that before training, we used to have kicking for goal as part of the training, official training, kicking for goal as part of the official training session, and marking, again, as part of the official training session. We'd get there at 4 o'clock, and training wouldn't start until 5, and that's all we'd do. Your
knees cut short your career, didn't ruin it, cut short your career. When did you first have problems with your knees?
Oh, it'd be early 70s.
73?
73, I think, and I spent the last 4 or 5 training sessions in the gym rather than out in the ground with footballs.
I suspect if we're talking about 73, And you're, what age, 25 then?
Something like that.
Should have been at the peak of your powers, shouldn't you?
That's right.
Did you think that you lost X number of years? Because, I mean, did you see yourself being at your best when the knee problems came?
I should have been at my best at that particular time, but those things happen, and I had to arrange my training routine around being able to play on a Saturday.
So you still played in premierships in 73, 74. Heavily restricted? A bit restricted or what?
In 73, I think I came on the ground at half-time. I can remember playing Collingwood, might have been the preliminary final.
Yep.
And we go in the room and Tom Hafey and Graham Richmond were in there and the doctor. And Graham said... Tommy said, we better get Royce on, and the doctor said, well, he won't be able to play in the grand final if he comes on. And Graham pipes up and says, we won't get to the bloody grand final if he doesn't come on.
And that was true.
And that happened there, we won.
Now, I'll tell you something you may not know. Dustin Martin, who inherited your number 4 at Richmond, is a ruck rover, and he's the height you were when you played centre-half forward.
That surprised me when I read that, yes. He might play centre-half forward one day, if he learns to jump.
I don't think he will. 72 grand final, Royce. You're a magnificent big occasion player, there's no doubt about that. But in that record-breaking game for goals, I think there was 27 goals. The Blues kicked 27, didn't they? And you kicked 22?
22.
That's right. Bruce Dewell got you that day, didn't he?
Yes, he did, but Bruce Dewell was probably the best player I ever played on. Like early on in his career, he was a purely defensive player, but as time went on, he added a handball and running to his game and became an attacking player. He was the hardest player to play on.
Why was he so good?
Quick, very quick, surprisingly. And I think that was his main asset.
Great balance?
No hair.
No. Royce, when it started to go south because of your knees and you were getting on, and it just didn't work, was that difficult for you to cope with, given how supreme you'd been for the first 6 or 7 years of your career?
Well, I was probably lucky to go in there and play in a premiership my first year.
Yeah.
So when the end came, I think I'd done enough, exceeded my expectations as to what I'd do, and when the doctor said there was no guarantee of the knee coming right, I had little option.
So you walked away content with what you'd done?
Yes, I was pleased.
Yeah. How are the knees now?
Oh, they're okay. Just old age now, arthritis, things like that.
You got a back problem?
I've got a bit of a back problem, but I mean...
A bit of a one? It means you can't fly to Melbourne, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So what's the problem?
Sciatica going down my right leg, so...
Can't be remedied?
Well, no guarantee of it being fixed.
How long since you've been to the big smoke?
2 years.
Is it really? Do you miss it?
Not really. I'm quite content down here.
Oh, yeah?
Peaceful lifestyle.
Yeah, I want to quote you something that a good friend of yours and a beautiful football writer, Martin Flanagan, said of you. He, as in you, is Richmond's Tasmanian tiger, much discussed but rarely seen. Are you reclusive?
No, not really. You're here. Drinking my tea.
We go back 40 years, though.
I know.
But do you mix? Are you social here?
Oh, yes, I mix.
Yeah?
But I don't go public. I find a lot of the players these days put themselves into positions where they set themselves up for trouble, and I've always done it, and Richmond have always done that. And like players going out to nightclubs and to all hours of the day, all hours of the night, is just not my scene, and it never has been.
I think you might have a memory lapse there, champ.
I could.
I think I've seen you out after dark a few times in your younger days.
That was in your dreams.
Coaching. You were seen to be one of the great players who went to coaching and didn't make it work. I mean, I know there were extenuating circumstances at Footscray, and you had 3.5 years there, did you not?
2.5.
2.5. 8 wins from 53 games. It's not a pretty record, is it? But
no.
What actually what happened?
We probably didn't have the players there at the time. We had a recruiting budget, I can remember, for $75,000 in those days, and that would virtually buy one player. So we had to go out and get the Stephen McPherson, Stephen Wallace and Michael McLean's young players who were 16 and 17 and bring them across. And they ended up playing 200 games for the club.
They did, but the problem was you were still Footscray's best player and you'd been retired 4 years.
That's your opinion.
After the break, Hart versus Carey. I want to ask you about another centre-half forward, a bloke called Wayne Carey. If they were picking the team of the last 125 years now, would it be Hart or Carey?
It's up to the judges, not to
Well,
me.
I know that, but I mean, an honest appraisal of the way you played and what you've
I think
seen.
the only way you can gauge those things is on records. And if you stack the records up, I think you'll find that we're about equal.
Yeah. His goal rate was probably better than yours.
Played full forward more than I did.
Yeah. You haven't lost it, have you? 4 flags for you, 2 for him, but he might have won a couple more BNFs. But the competition at Richmond for individual was immense, wasn't it? I mean, the blokes that you played with, Burke and Bartlett and Clay and all those sort of guys.
Yeah, I'll take the flags any time.
You lost the captaincy reluctantly, didn't you? At the end of, what was the end of 75?
Something like that.
Yeah.
About 72 we were second, 73 we won, 74 we won, 75 we came third, then I got the flick.
Yeah. It's a massive call given your status in the game at the time.
But my knees weren't that good, and I can understand the reason.
Did it cause any angst with you? Did you?
No, I was disappointed, of course, but I mean, I was at that time of the year, my career, that I could have done without the responsibility.
Okay, so we leave Melbourne. You've played your career with Richmond. You've coached the Bulldogs. Then home to Tasmania.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us how you filled in the last 30 years.
I had a farm for a period of time, which a few years ago I sold because I couldn't work it because of medical conditions, and that's about it.
So what do you do with you? You're not working, so what are you doing with your time?
I'm trying to keep upright.
A little more than 2 years ago, Royce, you had a major health scare. You were in hospital. Your wife at the time found you and was really disturbed by your appearance, and you were rushed to hospital. That must have been scary.
A double hernia operation, and when I came out of the operation, someone told me later, one of the hospital staff said I looked like dead meat.
It was a major health scare, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yeah. When they say when you come out of the operating theatre and you spend 5 days in intensive care,
wow,
you're not real well.
No. Did it make you change your lifestyle?
No, not at all. Not at all. That can happen to anyone.
Passion for footy, is it strong?
It has been this year. It waned a bit in the last 5 or 6 years because I reckon it was like keepings off, and it became terribly boring. In fact, Tom Hafey at one stage said to me, they may as well put the goals on the wing because they go sideways that much. And
they're still doing a bit of that too. Yeah.
But it's not as bad this year. It's a lot better than what it was.
But do you love the game still?
Oh, yes. It's the best game in the world.
Who appeals to you, man? Who do you watch and just love the way they play?
Jonathan Brown.
Yeah.
Centre half forward.
Yeah. That's not surprising.
He is a terrific player.
Still is?
But there are a lot of players over there that draw people to the game. I'd go and watch Buddy Franklin. Not many backmen.
No, and you haven't named a midfielder yet?
No, I haven't. The midfielder's got a midfielder medal. Don't need to name
It's
him.
called the Brownlow.
Yeah, that's it.
So are you optimistic about the Tigers?
Yeah, I think they're on the right path this time. They needed probably another key forward to help Jack out, but apart from that, they're a lot better side now than they have been for the last 20 years.
And that's Jack Revolt, another Clarence product, correct?
That's right.
Yeah. What would you, if Jack came to you and said, Royce, give me 1 or 2 observations about the way I play my footy, what would they be?
Kick more goals.
Could you help him to get to that point?
I don't know.
I mean, in the way, but you watch him play, you understand how the mechanics of that role work?
Probably could move around a bit more, but he possibly hasn't got the pace of a Matthew Richardson. That's the problem. He could play further afield, but he'd need to alter his game a bit.
Is it easier to play key forward now than it was when you played?
Well, I think it's about the same, but I can remember when I played, the ruckman used to drop back in front of the centre half forward, and you not only had to beat your opponent, you had a 6'6", 6'7" ruckman propping in front of you. And
So blokes like Gary Dempsey and these that you're talking
Peter Jones,
yeah,
Len Thompson.
Well, the other part of folklore in football is that Tommy's instructions were pretty simple at Richmond when you played. Just get the ball, kick it to Royce, and keep out of his way. Did you ever hear that said?
I heard Kevin Bartlett say that, but I don't think he said that to me.
Well, he wouldn't have said it to you. He might have said it to 19 other blokes.
I'll tell you one thing I didn't get: bruises on my chest for just passes.
Yeah.
We were just instructed to get the ball and kick it as quickly and as long as what you could.
Some great players who wore black and yellow in your time. Who was the best player that you played with?
Oh, there are several good players. You don't win four premierships without having good players, but It may surprise you, but I think the best player that I saw and I played for, with him and against him, was Ian Stewart. Like, he played in the Premiership for St Kilda and the Premiership for Richmond. When he first came to Richmond, I was asked to take him round the Tan, which is about 2-point-something k's long. He struggled to get round there, and he wasn't physically built to play VFL football, but he just worked that hard in his game and showed that much courage that he was able to perform the way he did.
Well, you said you never got him laced out on your chest. Well, Stewie would have been able to do that, wouldn't he?
Yes, but he was past his best then.
Was he past his best at Richmond?
I would say so, because he had terrific years at St Kilda, and he and Darryl Baldock had a terrific understanding.
Tell me, this is another story. I want to know whether it's fact or fiction. That every time you played a big game, you'd say to Stewie, "Am I as good as Baldock now?"
Oh, Stewie'd say that at about 11 o'clock on a Saturday night.
Because he loved Darryl Baldock, didn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
He revered Darryl Baldock.
Actually, at one stage, I think he said I was about equal.
Yeah.
That's as far as he went.
And you knew what he thought of him, so that's almost the ultimate accolade, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
How'd you get on with Kevin Sheedy?
All right, good.
Did you?
Yep.
There's a story about you in the Book of Champions, and it indicates that you and she used to butt heads.
No.
Not so?
No. I had different ideas on football, as some of the other players did at Richmond at that time, but no, not at all. Played in premierships together.
That doesn't mean you have to like each other.
Yeah.
Does it?
No, we're okay, we're fine.
Okay. Do you get back as much as you'd like to Richmond?
Probably not as much because of the medical condition.
But would you like to? I mean, lots of ex-players cherish the moments that they had together and the success they had. You seem to me, it's just an observation from the outside, that it doesn't faze you whether you're back there or not.
It doesn't worry me that much. I don't live in the past.
No.
I think I was always taught that. And I remember Tommy Hafey saying the same thing when I first came to the club. They used to talk about the 20s and the 30s, and he said, forget about that, think of the present and the future. And that's, I take a leaf out of his book.
At the end of '69, Royce, you're back in Adelaide, and under the rules that applied to national servicemen at the time, you were able to play for Glenelg in the South Australian National Footy League. They played in a grand final against Sturt. Rumour has it that they paid you $2,000 to play, is that correct?
Something like that.
Yeah, and you lasted 5 minutes.
I got knocked out in 5 minutes, but I played on the rest of the game. I think I had 20-odd kicks. I can recall, Ralph Brown tells me, he came in to have a word to me at half-time, and I still can't remember him being there. But I ended up playing the game out, and so they got their money's worth.
It's a rare achievement, grand finals in major leagues 7 days apart, isn't it?
Yeah, I think a Test cricketer, a wicketkeeper by the name of Gil Langley, many years beforehand, played in South Australia and played for Essendon in the VFL the week after.
I think, did Aaron Keating do that?
Aaron who? I only know Paul Keating.
Your eyes. Another one of these things, I don't know whether they're fact or fiction. Did you wear lenses playing football?
Well, how it all occurred, we were playing Hawthorn at the MCG, and I was walking off the ground with Neil Baum, and the scores were pretty close, and I turned around and looked up at the scoreboard just before we went up the race, and I couldn't read it. And I said, Neil, what's the score? He said, it's up there. I said, yeah, but I can't see it. The next week I got contact lenses.
And you wore them in games?
Wore them from that time on.
Okay.
That was about halfway through 72, I think.
They make a difference?
Yes, I could see.
You weren't a bad player for a bloke who couldn't see. Did you get belted?
I got knocked out about half a dozen times.
Legitimately or
Oh, well, look, I can't tell that. I ended up in hospital 3 times, I know that.
With concussion?
With a concussion.
Yeah. Royce, 1974, there's an event you may remember. It was called the Windy Hill Brawl. Tell us your memories.
Well, I took Mel Brown to the football that day, and a conversation in the car was from Mel Brown saying to me, well, what's a good place to start a brawl at Windy Hill? And I said, don't start it in front of the Essendon stand. The rest is history.
He seriously said that?
He seriously said that. And I can recall him going up the race, and someone threw a beer can at him, and we were getting changed behind the glass at the Essendon ground, and he kept the beer can. I said, what are you going to do with that? He said, I'll open the door in a couple of minutes and I'll hit the bloke over the head. And he did.
Did he really?
He did.
What was your part in the melee?
I wasn't playing.
Oh, you weren't playing?
I was sitting watching him.
Were you injured?
I was injured, yeah.
Okay. So you were there, but...
I was Mel Brown's chauffeur.
Okay.
But I didn't take him home.
Royce, the big crowds. Now, some players get intimidated by the numbers. Others thrive on it and grow. I suspect you were in the latter category, weren't you?
Well, I always used to think that going to play in front of a big crowd, if you had ability, you could show it to a big crowd. I look forward to playing in big games. In fact, I think if you look at records, I played better in front of bigger crowds than what I did against lesser sides and smaller crowds.
People have always said that you've had this very confident, brash even view of your own talents. Now, I'm prepared to say to you, and I believe this, that you're just honest about it, like Barry Cable was.
Well, I think you've got to be honest, be confident to be able to play sport at the top level. I don't think that's unique to myself or Australian football. I think that's with all top sportsmen around the place. You know, look at that guy that can run, Bolt.
Is there a moment in your career that you cherish more than any other?
I think the 67 premiership was because, as you said earlier on, that Richmond had been 20-odd years without a premiership, and just to see the faces of the supporters who have been following the club for so long, like they had great success in the 20s and the 30s, and that was the last of it. And 67, to see the people who have been following the club for all those years, the joy on their faces was just terrific.
Any regrets?
No, none at all.
Not one?
Not one.
So if you did the next 65 years over again, you'd do everything the same way?
Exactly the same.
With a couple of better knees?
One more premiership, maybe.
One more. All right, Royce, it was a great career. Love watching. I saw most of it. I really enjoyed every moment of it. It's great to catch up with you. I hope the future's as good as the past has been.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Royce.
This has been a Fox Footy production for Fox Sports.